Some quick context as to what we're doing. We have a staff meeting going on. So faculty is doing a deep dive into the student performance data. So take a look at it. We're going to go through the process and kind of see what they do here with a blended learning school with all this great data that they have. And you can hear faculty is already talking about it. I'm going to work some one-on-one time with a teacher as well and make my way around. And I'm going to ask all the spammers to please not get involved because we are going to start blocking you out because this is about kids and learning and education. And we're going to start learning from each other as well. Thank you. Okay, what do we got?
Okay, so I went through and I printed them all out, both math and reading.
Okay.
So I went through, highlighted overall SIP, and then I wrote in parentheses what they scored in the middle the last time, and then what their gain was, if they had a gain or a loss.
Off from previous.
So, so I went through and I did that. The highest one, a lot of them, a vast majority of them went up.
On the math,
a couple
or is
points,
that the,
math.
Okay.
This is math, which was our struggle point.
Okay.
The largest gain, 22 points from a 32 to a 54. Gain of 19 from a 33 to a 52.
Okay.
But I was wondering how, I guess, to take all of this and then gather it. Okay, so take, like, you know how their chart is?
Yeah.
But make a class-wide chart. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I
create like
figure
a
out
class average, what the class average looks like, or
well, no, 'cause I
how
know how to
each
do
kid
it.
falls on the class line. Is that what you're trying to do?
Kind of.
Okay.
Kind of, I guess.
We can do that. I can do that.
Okay.
So I'll upload it as a spreadsheet document.
Okay.
And then we can run a graph off of that, a S graph, and then it'll plot the kids on the plot accordingly.
Yes, that's what I was trying to do.
Okay. All right. I can do that.
And then reading essentially almost stayed the same because our reading was very strong last time. I can't remember what the average was off the top of my head, but it was probably in the 80s, I think. But a lot of them either had a loss of only a couple points or they went up substantially or stayed the same. And a lot of my kids are on...
What test is this? They want to know what test.
This is Scantron Performance Series test. It's kind of a benchmarking system. It goes in and tests them on Common Core standards for both ELA and math, so reading and math. A lot of my kids are higher. I have fifth graders, and a lot of them are on middle school reading levels as well as high school reading levels, which is great. They love to read. Comprehension is fairly well. So yeah, but math I think was like the struggle point. So we were really truly focusing on math. So for me to see a gain, although it wasn't a substantial gain, see it from last time till now, almost everyone except for maybe 4 or 5 people had a gain of a couple or more points. So that was great for me. I was happy with it.
How they perform on the algebra components, when the algebraic components when they did it?
They did fairly well.
That's the benchmark right there. Okay.
Yeah.
So it breaks it down into scores for you so you can see. I know they have some questions what it looks like. So those are the bandwidth items.
Yep, and these ones right here, these standards right here, it'll give them top 3 suggested learning objectives for them to kind of go back and take a look at, because it's the ones that they had the most struggle with when they took the test. So, for example, this young lady had a struggle with a 5th grade math standard, 7th grade and 6th grade standards. So some of them are working well above grade level, but sometimes they need to go back and take a look at those basic core standards to reach that full potential and to master the content that they're working at now.
I'll show you this.
Scantron works, the way that it works is that it takes them the very first time all the way to the very top of the tier, and when they can't break that top tier, it takes them up more from their first time. So the second time that they took it, when they couldn't go past that top, that's the only time that it showed a decrease, when really you have to go through and look at what the suggested learning objectives were and what the gain or loss was for that student, if that makes sense.
Yep. All right, I'm going to roll over to them, and I'm going to print up that. We'll work on getting that graph plotted for you. You got it? Okay, so we're going to move around to some other staff members to get into the conversation to see what they're doing, what they're working on.
As high as he could. So
What do you think you dropped? Let's see.
be able to identify types of text.
So informational text, the difference between a narrative story and informational text. Predicting.
Yeah, and there's that
inferencing.
compare and contrast again.
So we really
that's
need
something
that keeps
home
popping
work,
up. So
yeah, that I'm
some more things with Venn
working on.
diagrams and comparing stories and comparing characters
Yeah.
So for you guys, are first grade math?
Yes.
Okay. What,
But don't get math. It's what hers is math.
It's math and
But
reading.
yeah, she's got both on hers. But mine looks like math.
We were talking about the reading right then.
Yeah.
So what did you guys find to be the biggest rises and dips with the data, just looking at the data so far?
I mean, I think we both had lots of rises. I know for me, really reading was where I mainly had my rises. I mean, some of my kids that were really low really shot up
They
for
really
reading.
shot up. They're like kind of right there. The ones that were really, really, really low are like right there.
So what did you guys do fundamentally different that made the data go up?
I think some of the strategies we've been using, we've been talking more about predicting and inferencing and having the children ask questions, making that a mandatory thing, that they ask questions. We do a lot of book reports in my room where they stand up and the children ask them questions about the book, and they have to actually stand and report on the book. So that's giving them opportunity to talk. And they're responsible for reading that story and being able to explain what's happening in the story. What is the issue? What's the problem? Who solved the problem? How do they feel about the problem? Things like that. So I think that's helped a lot.
We integrated a lot more reading too.
Oh, yeah.
In science and social studies, we would read passages, and in the passages, it would be like a lot of higher vocabulary
Exactly.
and exposing them to
Really
different
reading
things.
stuff that was way above them, but we did it as a group.
Yeah.
I even brought out the highlighters and let them highlight certain things, even though
Also
I know
post reading? The highlighters.
Yeah,
The highlighters are
yeah,
awesome. Post reading.
absolutely, because that's the only way they're going to be able to pass these high-level exams and get exposed to that type of vocabulary. Is that complex reading, and close reading. So we're doing that. We talk about it. We have a vocabulary wall. We put up vocabulary.
And these kids are just in first grade?
These are first graders. I figure if I just expose them to that, I'm not holding them responsible for explaining the water study. No, but they're exposed to it, and they soak up a lot. These kids really soak up a lot. So.
Because I saw a big uptick in your data. That's why I asked.
Oh yeah, that's why.
I'll move on to the next group here. We're going to see here. This is 8th grade,
Seventh mix.
7th grade mix. Okay.
Second, third,
Speak up, Ms. Brown.
You're looking at the Scantron for 7th grade, the results of the last test.
And looking at growth and where they were from the last test.
but her left side.
So, Ms. Brown, what you're the reading teacher, right?
Yes.
So y'all in for that 7th and 8th grade?
For 7th
For
grade.
7th grade. Did you
Yeah.
see predicted growth? What are you seeing in the data? What's the data telling you?
The data is telling me that most of them did grow. They did have some growth. Some had a little bit below what they were the last time, but they still didn't go below the average,
Okay.
the state average.
So what do you attribute the growth to then?
I attribute it to kind of like small group instructions to do one-on-one with the students, because we had started the small groups before this Scantron test was given, and I could see growth in the ones that had dropped a little bit. They kind of came up a little more. And so I think the small group instruction helps a lot. The one-on-one, the small group stuff,
Okay.
because it kind of targets what they're weak in.
Absolutely. All right, what do we got going on? Math?
Yes,
What's
math.
going on in math?
Right now we've been working in rotations, and we've been working with circles, finding the area and circumference. They just took a test for me, and they did test corrections today in groups and kind of helped each other out. And when we come back from spring break, we're going to have the different standards that we've covered, and they're going to rotate around and just kind of work on mastering those again.
So when you say groups, is that the group component, or is that something different?
Different groups.
Okay.
These are their like actual homerooms that I see as a class, not the groups for the power hour in the morning, but they're actual homerooms, and they're grouped in groups of 4. So people who are struggling on one thing are paired with some who are doing really well with it, and they can kind of help each other out. And then the groups are switched daily, depending on what topic we're covering.
Now, what tools do you use for instructional practice with the kids in the math class?
What do you mean?
So in your blended learning classes, so you have the one-to-one computers. So what specific websites or tools
we do a lot of 10 marks. The students seem to like 10 marks. They're constantly emailing me, asking me to upload more 10 marks, and it's 10 questions, and there are certain standards, whatever they need work on or whatever they want to practice. They'll let me know, and then I'll assign those 10 marks to them, and then they can go home and practice them. And we have a star chart that we keep, and when they master a 10 marks with a 80% or higher, they get a star on that certain Common Core standard.
And that 10 marks, is it an adaptive assessment? So it adapts with the kid, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then they can even get on, and it gives them hints, and they can watch tutorials if they get stuck on a certain problem.
Okay. And then so after all of that, what time do the kids have with you personally?
They'll come up. I kind of try to go around to each group as they're working, and I kind of just double check on them, and I'm there to help them whenever they need help. And then we normally do, whenever they're doing silent individual work, we'll do one-on-one meetings. So after they took their Scantron test, we had one-on-one conferences where we went through their scores, and we talked about what they needed to work on, where they were at, and how they felt things have been going.
Excellent. Got my
They're the ones that are considered a weakness.
And then do you see where it says only include talent bank or so-and-so's current grade level? And then I don't do anything with the other, and I usually do 3 objectives per.
Yeah, those are already the weaknesses. You just have to say how many do you get.
Right, but you click the attainment and
You have to click at least something.
Just click it in place.
And then when you come up, it'll tell you, and then off to the side, it gives you the resources.
So go ahead and click on it because I want to see what comes up.
The one he's attained or needs?
Needs. I want a weakness.
Okay. Oh, she just clicked.
Keep going because you're in the same place as he's at. I want to see what comes up for your lesson, what they tell you to use for your child. You have to click on that.
What was that list that you had on your computer?
Sorry.
What was that list?
That's my spreadsheet. This is my math, their SIP scores, their grade level equivalency, and all of their weaknesses from 4th grade down. I didn't go higher than 4th grade. And then,
you're a 4th grade teacher.
Because I'm a 4th grade teacher. And then this is the same thing but for reading. And my kids that were lower, I added the Lexile level in as well.
Okay, excellent. All right, keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt there.
Some of them don't have the objectives, so I still click on. I know what the documents have. I go click on your school. And I can flip it over. Just upload it. Try that. Okay.
What you guys are seeing is this is staff doing self-directed PD, deep diving their data, which is the way PD and staff meetings should be, where staff has time to work together.
Flip it over to mine. That's okay. I'm not sure how to do it.
And they're clarifying each other's questions and collaborating to figure out what's the best practices.
It's not going to be a big no. Now,
the last time when we tried to do a copy and paste to Schoology, it wasn't using the test, but taking that test and copying it.
Not mine.
Yeah.
I know how to do that.
Piece by piece, each question.
I know how to do that.
Until then.
Yes. Yes.
He said you